The mist clings to my cheeks like breath from a sleeping dragon. Chang'an awakens not with noise, but with silence laced in incense, a hush so ancient it feels older than the walls themselves. I rise before the sun, before even the crows and the monks, while the lamps are still glowing faintly from the courtyards, casting soft halos on the cobbled streets outside our workshop. The streets are damp, kissed by the night's lingering dew, and each footstep echoes gently like a memory being retraced. I pull my robe tighter. The silk of my sleeves brushes against my skin, smooth, alive, and whispering. We wear the seconds of our labor, though never the finest bolts. Those are for the palace. I inhale deeply. Charcoal smoke, fermented rice, and the unmistakable metallic tang of the dye vats fill the morning air. There is comfort in it, like the scent of old scrolls, knowledge steeped in years and labor. We are silk weavers. We do not speak loudly, nor do we live loudly. But our work moves through corridors of power, through caravans to distant lands, across mountains that most of us will never see. As I step into the weaving house, I touch the wooden threshold 3 times. It's not superstition, it's gratitude, for the roof, for the work, for the loom that creaks like an old friend when I greet it. There are 7 of us here this morning, though the looms will sound like 70 when we begin. Old Ma Li hums a tune older than her teeth as she preps the bobbins. Her eyes are nearly opaque, but her hands never falter. They say she once wove a robe for the consort of Emperor Xuanzong himself. I believe it, not because of how she says it, but how she doesn't. The light begins to shift through the high windows. Pale gold creeps across the floorboards, touching the stacks of silk threads like fingers choosing a story. The threads are sorted by color, crimson like dragon fruit flesh, sapphire like river depths, pale jade, and imperial yellow, the rarest of all. Only licensed workshops may keep that shade. We guard it like a treasure, because it is. To wear it without right is a crime of treason. My loom awaits, its frame polished smooth by generations. The heddles sway gently in the breeze from the courtyard, like reeds bowing to unseen music. I run my hands over the threads. There's a rhythm to it all. Left foot, right foot, beat the shuttle, breathe. We are dancers bound to our instruments. The patterns we create are not just motifs, they are symbols. Each phoenix feather, lotus bloom, or curling cloud tells a story the court will wear and the poets will interpret. This morning, I begin a piece for a wall tapestry meant for the summer palace. The design was drawn by a court painter, whose scrolls arrive wrapped in silk of their own, scented faintly with camphor. It is a garden scene, cranes in flight, pine trees bending in the wind, and plum blossoms holding snow. As I work, my thoughts drift, not away from the task, but into it, like rain into soil. I remember my mother's fingers guiding mine, showing me how tension shapes both fabric and spirit. "Let the thread guide you," she'd whisper, "but never forget you are guiding it too." Outside, the city stirs. Vendors call from beneath awnings, their voices bouncing down alleyways. Bells chime at the temple, marking a new hour. Somewhere, a gate creaks open, and hoofbeats echo like drums down the avenue. Perhaps it is an envoy from Sogdiana, or a scroll carrier from Luoyang. Silk travels farther than we do, through deserts, over oceans, traded for glass, spices, and stories. A scent drifts in, burning sandalwood. It means the silk inspector is near. We all straighten slightly, not from fear. We are confident in our craft, but out of respect. In this city, silk is more than commerce. It is diplomacy, art, currency, and heritage. To weave poorly is not only to waste thread, it is to disrespect an entire lineage. The inspector steps in quietly. He walks like someone who has memorized the floor. He nods to Malie, inspects her shuttle's tension, and pauses briefly at my station. His eyes linger on the first lines of cranes I've begun. He says nothing, but offers a slow nod. That is enough. As he leaves, we exhale together, and the looms sing a little louder. I take a sip of barley tea, still steaming in its clay cup. Its bitterness anchors me. There's still much to do before the sun reaches its peak. Sometimes I wonder, when my silk travels westward on camelback, when it reaches Samarkand or Baghdad or Byzantium, do they feel our breath in it? Do they know it was spun in a city where poets write under lantern light and old women hum lullabies into thread? The crane I'm weaving now has just taken flight. The wingtip curves like the edge of a smile I once knew. I press the shuttle through, then beat the thread into place. The rhythm steadies me, as it always does. At times I hear the echo of distant drums, not real ones, not from the barracks or the streets, but those of memory, as if somewhere deep inside another life is weaving beside me. Perhaps this is what the poets mean when they say our souls remember things our bodies do not. Mist still curls outside the windows. It never truly leaves, only softens and rises. Like silk from the vat, like stories from the past, like the dreams we sew into every thread. The loom groans softly as I press my foot to the pedal. The fibers shift, part, and embrace, like the exhale of a sleeping animal. I could operate it in complete darkness. Perhaps I have, on nights when the summer rains turned the city into a quiet sea of lanterns. My hands know this rhythm better than they know prayer. Sometimes, when I am still enough, I forget where I end and the loom begins. The first time I touched silk, I was 6. It was a scrap from a robe, too damaged to sell, too precious to discard. It shimmered in my palm, weightless yet dense, as though it carried more than color, something deeper. My mother let me sleep with it under my pillow. I dreamt of flying fish, golden bridges, and voices in languages I didn't know. I've been chasing that feeling ever since. Now, decades later, the threads speak in murmurs only I can hear. They remember the rains that dyed them, the silkworms that spun them, the mulberry leaves once kissed by morning sun. I think of the peasants in Sichuan who tend the worms, of the women who boil the cocoons, their hands red and raw, steam rising around them like ancestral smoke. Their labor becomes my medium. Without them, I would have nothing to shape. We are distant, invisible to one another, yet bound by fiber. The tapestry I weave today asks for restraint. It is for the empress's summer garden, not a robe, but a hanging scroll to soften the stone of a private chamber. She has asked for something delicate as sleep and vibrant as youth. The painter's sketch was masterful, but only we, the weavers, can translate light into thread. I reach for the indigo. It stains my thumb like bruised night. Next, the blush of peony pink, the muted moss of cypress bark, and gold thread thinner than hair, pulled from coils sealed in lacquered boxes.
We guard this gold like others guard incense or secrets. Every few minutes I pause, not to rest, but to listen. The thread must lie smooth. A misstep in tension will whisper through the fabric like a lie. I press and tighten with a breath held in, then release. As the scene unfolds, crane wings, pine fronds, and swirling clouds, I remember a story my grandfather told me of a girl who fell in love with a phoenix woven on her family's banner. She whispered to it every night until, one morning, it was gone. Flown from the cloth, they said, in search of her dreams. He told it to make me laugh. I didn't. I believed him. We who weave live between what is seen and what is sensed.
Between the shuttle and the weft, something stirs. Sometimes I think it's the spirit of the silk itself. Other times I think it is memory, not just mine, but collective. In this place we do not write history, we breathe it into cloth. At noon, Ma Li passes me a rice ball wrapped in lotus leaf. We eat in silence. The sound of the city grows beyond our walls. Horses clatter past, street performers strike cymbals, distant laughter rises from wine houses. But here it is the loom's steady rhythm that holds us. A young apprentice spills a jar of red dye. It splashes across the stone like blood, too vivid, too careless. She gasps, bows furiously. No one shouts. Instead, Ma quietly sets down her shuttle and kneels beside her, dabbing the mess with strips of rough cotton. There's no shame in red, she says, only in waste. The girl weeps. Ma pats her back once, then returns to her seat. It is our way. The loom teaches patience better than any monk. Later, I stretch my hands and walk out to the side courtyard. The garden is small, mostly moss, river stones, and a single plum tree, now green with summer. A pair of butterflies circle lazily. I sit beneath the eaves, watching them drift between shadow and sunlight. The same breeze that moves their wings brushes my sleeve. I close my eyes. For a moment I hear not the city, but the rustle of mulberry leaves far to the south, where a child might now be reaching for a silkworm cocoon. Each cocoon holds a single thread, almost invisible, over 1,000 meters long. A single robe requires thousands of them, boiled and unwound with care and reverence. The silk's strength is hidden in its softness. Like the women who raise the worms, like my mother, like the Empress perhaps, a paradox that only the loom understands. When I return to my seat, I notice the light has changed. Afternoon stretches long across the floor. The shadows fall differently, deeper. The colors on the tapestry seem richer, more secretive. I thread the shuttle again. The crane's beak nears completion. Soon it's I, the soul of the bird. This part must be perfect. One misplaced thread and the bird will look blind or cruel or dull. I hold my breath and lower the shuttle once, twice, 3 times. The pupil forms in midnight black, rimmed by the palest ivory. It gleams. The crane now watches me. It is a quiet companionship, this watching. Some days I feel as though my creations live a little, only a little, but enough to make the room feel fuller when they are near. I once dreamed of a wall full of creatures I had made. Phoenixes, dragons, deer in moonlight, all sleeping, waiting, resting between lives. When I awoke, I found a thread knotted around my finger like a ring. I never told anyone, not even Ma Li.
Perhaps that is the essence of weaving, not just making, but dreaming through the hands. The loom does not judge our thoughts. It simply accepts them, presses them into form. Outside, a bell rings thrice. The silk guild is holding assembly, perhaps, or a merchant ship has arrived at the western gate. There are always new arrivals in Chang'an. Persians, Arabs, Koreans, Tibetans, each bearing gifts, each drawn by our silk. They call it si, a small word for something that moves empires. But tonight I do not think of traders or coin. Tonight I think only of thread, how it slips between fingers like river water, how it captures color like glass holds light, how it listens more than it speaks. Another crane wing begins. Another line of pine needles take shape. And somewhere in the weave, between the dreams and the threads, I begin to vanish, not into nothing, but into fabric, into something that will outlive me. The sun crests high above the tiled rooftops of Chang'an, pouring golden heat down onto the city like tea from an unseen kettle. By midday, the air in the dye market thickens, fragrant, humid, alive.
I step through the western gate with a woven basket in hand, my sleeves tucked and my sandals powdered with street dust. The market pulses like a living thing. Voices float through the air in a dozen tongues: Mandarin, Sogdian, Turkic, Persian, and others I cannot name. But it's the colors, oh, the colors that rule this place. To one side, great bundles of safflower petals spill from canvas sacks like captured sunrises, their scent sharp and citrusy. Nearby, indigo cakes wrapped in paper glisten with a sheen of midnight. The merchants press them between their palms to demonstrate purity. The deeper the blue, the better the dreams it dyes. Turmeric powder glows like powdered gold, its scent warm and earthy, clinging to everything it touches. Buckets of dye bubble gently over coals, exhaling steam tinted like sunsets, bruises, and fresh-plucked fruit. This is where silk is born again. I weave the thread, but here the thread finds its soul. A vendor with bronze rings in his beard beckons me. "Back for the wisteria dye?" he asks, lifting a cloth soaked in soft lilac. It flutters like a breath. I nod, tracing the hue with my eyes. It's perfect, gentle, like whispers on temple steps. As I lean in to inspect his vat, I'm hit by a wave of scents. Boiled bark, crushed shells, fermented plum, and something I cannot place. Perhaps dried seaweed or bitter almond. The market is a scent no poet could ever fully describe. I pass the stalls slowly, my basket slowly filling. Madder root for a shade like fresh pomegranate skin. Powdered cochineal from far to the west, traded at prices we dare not speak aloud. Fragments of alunite to fix the colors, and a sprig of osmanthus, not for dyeing, but for my pocket, to scent the hours I'll spend at the loom. Children dart between baskets and hanging cloth, their laughter sharp like bells. They wear rags stained with every hue imaginable, accidents of beauty. A boy no older than 10 tries to sell me a scrap of silk with smeared ink across it. "It belonged to a poet," he insists. I smile and hand him a few copper coins anyway. The cloth is ruined, but I like the story. There's a rhythm to this market, just like the loom. Vendors chant their wares, mortar and pestle echo in stone bowls. Water sloshes as assistants stir and pour and lift skeins from dye vats. The silk threads hang like banners of peace after a long war, drying in rows, each one glowing faintly in the light. Watching them sway is like watching spirits dance in slow procession. I pause before a woman with her sleeves rolled high. She is stirring a mixture so dark it seems to swallow light, a new blend perhaps. Her hands are stained to the wrist. She meets my gaze but says nothing. She doesn't need to. In her bowl floats a future color, one no one yet knows. I nod to her and move on, half in awe, half in envy. It's easy to forget, amid all this beauty, how fragile it is. A single rainstorm can ruin a batch. A faulty mordant can strip weeks of work. Even sunlight, too much, too sudden, can twist a color into something unrecognizable. And yet we do it, over and over. Because when it works, when the threads drink in the dye like blood into cloth, it's magic, it's alchemy, it's worship. I think often of how color moves people. A robe of imperial yellow makes commoners fall silent. A sleeve of crimson can stop a lover mid-sentence. A banner of azure fluttering in the wind can call armies to rise or retreat. And all of it begins here, in pots and sacks and bowls, in stains beneath fingernails and soot-smudged cheeks. There's a woman I recognize, Lady Zhen's attendant. She buys in bulk for the palace, never bartering, always with a quiet nod. She selects a bolt dyed the shade of first plum blossoms and another in smoky jade. When she sees me, she does not smile, but tilts her head, barely. That is how we greet each other, those of us in the world of thread and shadow. As I leave the market, my basket full and my feet dusted in saffron and sand, I pass a Sogdian merchant who holds up a scrap of patterned silk. "Straight from the west," he says in halting Chinese. "Birds and grapes, Roman design." I pause. The design is strange. Full-bodied birds, their eyes huge, their wings rounded instead of feathered, woven in a looping pattern of vines. It is bold, odd, beautiful. I do not buy it, but I touch it, just once. The silk is rougher than ours, but it holds a kind of truth. I wonder if our cloth seems just as foreign in his homeland. I wonder if he dreams of Chang'an the way I dream of Samarkand. By the time I return to the workshop, the light has softened. It catches on my freshly dyed threads like fireflies. I spread them carefully on the cedar racks, letting each strand fall straight and true. The colors speak even before they're woven. The peony pink hums of soft laughter. The indigo sighs of monastic calm. The safflower red remembers lovers and lost causes. I close my eyes for a moment and imagine the tapestry to come. I see it already, not yet born, but stirring in the cocoon of my mind. The market is behind me now, but its echoes linger. The calls, the perfumes, the stains on my skin. They will follow me to the loom, whispering their stories through my fingers. And when the cloth is finished, someone, somewhere, will run their hand across it and wonder, where did this color come from? What hands shaped this? They will not know, but I will. Because today, in the heart of Chang'an, amid spices and smoke and unspoken deals, I bought dreams. And now I will weave them. It begins with a rustle. Not the sound of silk, not yet, but the rustle of rumors, of court servants exchanging glances behind sleeves, of scrolls passed hand to hand with wax still warm from the seal. In Chang'an, whispers travel faster than caravans. And when the court stirs, even the wind seems to lean in and listen. Today the whispers ride on jasmine-scented air. I hear them first from Lynn, our delivery boy, who arrives breathless and flushed. "They're commissioning new robes," he says between gasps, "for the Mid-Autumn Festival. The Empress wants phoenixes with moon patterns." He says it like it's a miracle. It is. A festival robe for the Empress is not merely a garment. It is a symbol, a performance, a political statement in thread and dye. It will be seen by hundreds, described by thousands, remembered for years. And if it is beautiful enough, perfect enough, it might even be immortalized in verse. We stop what we're doing. Even Ma Li, who once wove for Consort Yang herself, lays down her shuttle and presses her hands together in a rare gesture of reverence. "Moon patterns," she murmurs. "That's a request for subtlety, illusion, reflection." The design sketch arrives hours later. It is delivered not by a messenger, but by a court official, whose robes are trimmed in pale silver, the kind reserved for those who serve within the inner palace gates. His face is unreadable, his movements precise. He unrolls the scroll on our table without speaking. The image is exquisite. A phoenix arcs across a field of clouds, not fierce, not roaring, but graceful, contemplative. Beneath its wings, the pattern of the full moon repeats, not as a shape, but as a suggestion. Curves in the tail feathers, crescents hidden among clouds, a motif of ebb and return. There is a poem in the bottom corner, written in the Empress's own hand. "Let the moon wear silence, and the bird carry dreams." No signature, just that. We bow to the scroll as if it were a person. When the official leaves, we sit in silence for a while. The weight of the commission is not fear, it is sacredness. Like painting calligraphy with incense ash, like building a temple out of breath. Ma Li speaks first. "This robe must not just shimmer. It must glow. It must breathe." I nod. I understand. The phoenix must not only rise, it must feel like it was never stitched, as if it appeared there, born of moonlight. Preparations begin immediately. We separate ourselves from the other works. The dyes are checked for purity. The threads, all of them mulberry silk of the finest grade, are inspected, twisted, stretched, caressed. Not a knot, not a fray. Each thread must behave like water. For the moon motifs, we decide on a blend. White silk with the faintest lavender sheen, achieved only by mixing a drop of crushed pearl into the dye. It's nearly invisible, but under lantern light, it gleams like breath on cold glass. For the phoenix, we argue. Some want fire tones, red, gold, orange. But I suggest something different. Silver and dusk blue, I say, like feathers lit by twilight. Let the fire be imagined. They consider. Ma Li looks at me and smiles, just slightly. "Let the fire be imagined," she repeats. "Yes." In the days that follow, the loom becomes a shrine. We rise before dawn. We speak little. The phoenix begins in silence. Each feather a meditation. Each cloud a breath. The moon curves take shape beneath our fingers, not as circles, but as rhythms.
like music stitched into thread. A young apprentice named May handles the gold thread. Her hands are small but impossibly steady. She holds the shuttle like a calligrapher holds a brush, reverent, precise. I see her mouth move as she works. Not prayers, poetry. We all feel it. This robe is not just silk. It is story. And though the Empress will wear it only once, perhaps it will echo far beyond her. There's something strange about weaving for the court. We never meet those who wear our creations. We don't see the gasps, the applause, the nods of appreciation. We only imagine them. And yet, that distance makes it almost more powerful, like feeding incense to a god you dare not face. On the fourth day, a minor panic.
A section of the robe warps slightly at the seam where moon and tail meet. It's nearly imperceptible, but to us it is a flaw. I stay up through the night undoing it. Thread by thread, breath by breath, I walk the edge of the moon backwards. It is not despair I feel. It is devotion. At dawn, the robe is whole again, flawless, as if it had never stumbled. Ma Li finds me asleep beside the loom. She covers me with a piece of raw silk. Even the moon wanes before it waxes, she says gently. The final touch is added on the seventh day. A single falling feather descending near the hem, barely visible, stitched with white on white. It is a reminder, even phoenixes fall, even gods must rest. We send the robe off without ceremony, folded carefully in a box of red lacquer, wrapped in gauze, sealed with wax. It leaves in the arms of a silent official. No word of thanks, no promise of return. That night we wait by the windows. The mid-autumn moon rises above the palace roofs, full and luminous. We cannot see the festival from here, but we imagine it. In our minds, the Empress turns slowly. The lanterns glow gold. And the robe, our robe, catches the light like a memory, remembered only in dreams. Someone across the street plays a flute. The melody is simple, soft. It feels like something we've always known. I close my eyes and see the phoenix still flying, its wings stitched into the sky. Gold thread is dangerous, not in the way of knives or fire, but in its quiet seduction, its shimmer, its softness, its illusion of obedience. It glides between fingers like a promise, and tangles like a lie. Only the most skilled among us dare use it regularly, and even then with reverence. A mistake in red silk can be hidden with a stitch. A mistake in gold, it lives forever. Today, I work with gold. The robe on my loom is for a high-ranking court historian, commissioned as part of his retirement ceremony. A man who has spent a lifetime translating emperors into ink now wishes to wear something that captures silence, memory, and honor. He has asked for dragons, 5 of them, trailing across the back of a robe that will be seen only once, perhaps even only in passing. But he also requested something else. Hidden characters, he wrote in the margin, symbols of truth, only the worthy will notice. The court is filled with symbols, birds, clouds, flowers, but this is different. This is subtext. This is the weaving of quiet rebellion. It excites me.
I begin with the dragons, each a different shade of bronze, emerald, and smoke. They coil with purpose, their bodies shaped not in fire, but in restraint. My gold thread will line their eyes, trace the edge of their spines, and shimmer faintly along their claws. But between their scales, in the negative space, I begin to hide. First, a poem, scattered. A single stroke here, another there. Curves that, seen together, spell truth. Another section, near the sleeve hem, suggests silence. If read as calligraphy, it is nothing. If read with patience and light, it speaks. The challenge is not technical. It is moral. To embed meaning the wearer desires, but the court must never suspect. I weave as if writing in fog. The gold thread gleams unnaturally in daylight. To use it in shadows, I wait until early evening, when the light softens. I dip the thread in camellia oil, let it rest, then press it between parchment before stringing it through the shuttle. Every movement feels like a secret being kept. My breath shallows as I work. The loom creaks. The floor is quiet. In the corner, May watches. "Are you writing something?" she asks, too softly. "No," I reply. "I'm remembering something." She doesn't press. She has learned, like all of us, that some answers are part of the weave, never spoken, only traced with a fingertip. As the dragon's spine nears completion, I layer in one last symbol, a broken coin. Two curved lines, separated, mirrored across the lower hem. To most, it will appear as decoration. But to the historian, it's a reference to his father, a coin he once described in a memoir, cracked in half during a famine, kept as proof of survival. I have never met the man, but I know this part of his story. We all do, if we listen closely enough. Gold thread isn't just decoration. It's memory. The Tang court views gold as sacred, a symbol of heaven, of power, of cosmic right. To touch it casually is arrogance. To waste it is disgrace. Every strand is accounted for, logged and locked away. We receive ours in tightly wound rolls, escorted by a scribe who notes the weight before and after each project. They weigh the thread, but they cannot weigh the meaning. Once, years ago, I heard of a weaver who embedded a political message into a banner for the court, a series of dots and angles that spelt out a forbidden name. He was exiled, his work destroyed, but the rumor remains. I do not seek exile. I seek beauty. But sometimes they are close cousins. That night, as I finish the third dragon, I hear Ma Li speaking in the back room. Her voice is soft, almost a chant. She is reciting a tale from memory, a folk story about a weaver who stitched the stars into a robe so vast it wrapped around the mountains. When the emperor wore it, he forgot who he was. He wandered the kingdom lost, believing himself a god of wind. I've heard this story many times, but tonight it sits differently. What power we hold, we who work in thread. What influence hidden in silk and shimmer. At dawn, I complete the fifth dragon. Its tail ends in a spiral that suggests a question mark. Subtle, slow, elegant. I run my fingers across the finished scene. The dragons appear fierce, yet still. Powerful, yet ancient. And hidden among them, meaning. The historian will understand. No one else will. That is the beauty of it. I fold the robe carefully, then pause.
In the gold, I see my reflection. Not my face, exactly, but a version of myself. One I do not know fully. One who carries messages no voice could bear. One who, without a single word, leaves behind an echo. Before I wrap the robe in mulberry paper, I whisper to it, not a blessing, just a thought. May the truth find you when you are ready. I seal the parcel. By afternoon, it is gone. The workroom feels colder after. May lights a stick of incense and hums. Ma Li begins a new sketch, slow and deliberate. I wipe the gold dust from the work table and fold the leftover thread into a silk pouch. We are never allowed to keep gold. But one strand, too short to weigh, too thin to notice, has caught on the hem of my sleeve. I let it stay. Before I ever touched a loom, before I could tell a warp from a weft, I sat in the corner of a quiet room, watching my grandfather weave silence into silk. He did not speak much. His eyes were always half-lidded, as though he saw something beyond the walls. A memory, perhaps, or a future only he could feel. But when his hands moved, they danced. Not quickly, not forcefully, but with a rhythm that slowed the air around him. It was as though the world paused to observe his work. Silk, he used to say, is not just thread. It is a conversation between time and patience. He taught me without words. He would place my hand on the shuttle and nod. If I pressed too hard, he would remove my hand. If I moved too quickly, he would tap the side of the loom. Only when I learned to move with breath, not against it, did he smile. He had learned the craft from his mother, who learned from hers, in a village near Chengdu, where mulberry trees lined the river, and the air always smelled of damp earth and tea leaves. They wove in open courtyards, where the silk dried under bamboo poles, and children played among vats of dye.
He would describe the threads blowing in the wind like prayer flags, each strand fluttering with the secrets of the women who tended them. In the winter of my 10th year, he brought home a bundle of raw silk and said it was mine. "You'll ruin the first 10 meters," he said, matter of fact. "That's part of the bargain." He was right. I tangled it, snapped it, dyed it into a color so hideous it looked like bruised cabbage. But he never scolded me. Only once, when I cried in frustration, did he speak softly. "The silk won't obey you until you stop trying to control it." I did not understand then. I do now. He believed that every fabric carried a memory, and that the weaver's responsibility was to listen. He spoke often of a robe he once made for a grieving widow, midnight blue, embroidered with falling plum petals in silver thread. She didn't say a word, he recalled, but the robe said everything. When I asked how he knew what to weave, he said her silence was louder than any commission. His most famous work was a tapestry he made at the age of 30, The 8 Rivers. It was displayed in the governor's hall for decades before being gifted to a visiting prince from Japan. I've only seen it once, in a faded ink painting. It showed not just rivers, but movement, currents, light, time. The threads shifted with perspective. Looked at from one side, they shimmered with spring. From the other, they turned to frost. No one ever figured out how he achieved the effect. Some said he used a secret blend of dyes. Others whispered he whispered to the threads while he worked. But I know the truth. He listened. He would sit for hours before the first stitch, just holding the threads, sometimes with his eyes closed, sometimes humming a song I never learned. And only when the silk grew quiet would he begin. He treated tools like family. His loom was named Zin, heart. His shuttle he called feather.
When he passed, we found a bundle of his earliest works tucked behind a wall panel. Cloth too coarse to sell, but too dear to burn. Every piece had a poem sewn into the hem. Not full verses, just fragments. Breath upon breath. The river does not ask. Even stones remember. I keep them now, wrapped in cedar caper, stacked under my workbench. On difficult days, I run my hands across them. They speak to me more clearly than the living ever could. His death came in spring, a soft passing. He had been sitting by the window, turning a thread between his fingers. When I entered, he looked at me, really looked, and said only, "You're ready." Then he closed his eyes. The birds outside kept singing. At the funeral, Ma Li wept openly. So did half the district. Apprentices brought bolts of silk he had left them, strange colors, half-woven scenes, abstract shapes that only made sense if you closed your eyes and remembered how he spoke. To me, he left his loom. It groaned when I first touched it, a sound like sorrow, but then it settled, as if it knew me. That first evening, I sat before it, uncertain. I didn't weave. I just placed my hands on the frame and listened. And I heard him. Not in words, not in memory, but in rhythm. In the beat between warp and weft. In the breath that comes before a stitch. Now, years later, I sometimes wonder if he still watches me. When I make a mistake, I expect to hear the tap of his fingers on the loom's edge. When I try something bold, a forbidden blend of dyes, an unconventional motif, I imagine his smirk. Once I dreamed he visited the workshop. He wore a robe of pure white silk, with threads that shimmered in patterns I didn't recognize. He didn't speak. He only placed a single silk cocoon in my palm and nodded. I woke with it still there. Of course, it was only a curled ribbon of thread, but I kept it. Now, in the quietest moments, I think of the inheritance we never name. Not the tools or the techniques, but the feel of silk between fingers, the patience to sit through the tangle, the willingness to listen. My grandfather used to say, "A single thread, when woven with care, can outlive a dynasty." I believe him, because even now, when I weave, when I breathe through the loom and let the silk guide me, I hear his voice in every knot I untangle, in every shimmer of light across the cloth. He is here, in every fiber, still listening. There are mornings when the city stills, and Chang'an becomes something older than itself, not just a capital, not just a crossroads of empires, but a breathing echo of every footstep that has passed through its gates. On those mornings, the air carries sandalwood and barley dust, and the sky above the pagodas is washed in pale amber. It is on such a morning that I walk the quiet path to the temple of Dachien, silk threads tucked into my sleeve like prayers. I do not come here to trade. I come to listen. The monks know me by now.
They nod as I pass beneath the arch where the stone lions stand guard with worn teeth and sleepy eyes. They are not interested in silk, and yet they've taught me more about weaving than many masters. In their silence, I've learned patience. In their chants, I've learned rhythm. And in their prayers, I've learned reverence, the kind that must infuse each thread if it is to carry truth. Inside the temple, the sound of the loom is replaced by the gentle sweep of a broom, the shuffle of sandals on stone, and the low hum of sutras recited under breath. I sit near the garden wall, where a cherry tree leans as though it, too, is listening. I remove the bundle of silk from my sleeve. 5 strands, dyed in pale gray, moon yellow, vermilion, sea blue, and ash green. They are not for a commission. They are for a pattern I saw in a dream, a lotus opening beneath a dragon's eye. No one has asked for it, but still I must make it.
This is the weaver's paradox. We are hired to create, but often we must create without hire, without audience, without reward. Simply because something unnamed pulls at the corners of the mind, whispering, "Now, begin." As I arrange the threads across my lap, a shadow passes, a monk, young, eyes still bright with questions. He bows slightly, pauses, and finally asks, "Why do you bring silk here?" I think before I answer. Because here the threads are quiet enough to speak back. He blinks, then nods, as if he understands, or pretends to. We speak no further. The world is already too loud. When I return to the workshop later that day, the air has changed. A caravan has arrived, from the west by the smell of it. Spices, sweat, sun-dried fabric, and horse leather fill the street. A tall man with curling hair and copper skin holds out a bolt of cloth unlike anything I've seen. It shimmers like oil on water, purple one moment, silver the next, with tiny mirrors sewn in spirals. "From Bharat," he says, in thick, careful Chinese, "for your empress." I take it in my hands, curious. The fabric is coarse by our standards, but the pattern is hypnotic. He sees my interest and smiles. "We trade dreams," he adds. I offer a nod. So do we. He unrolls another bolt, green and gold, the pattern woven with repeating vines and animals I do not recognize. A deer with 3 eyes, a bird with antlers, a tiger with a jeweled tail. I wonder, are these myths or memories, symbols or truths? We do not buy, not today, but he leaves us a gift, a spool of thread the color of dusk, made from a fiber I cannot name. He says nothing more as he walks off, his caravan creaking behind him, bells chiming softly from the oxen's harness. Later, I show the thread to Ma Li. "Strange," she murmurs. "It smells of rain." She passes it between her fingers, holds it to her cheek, then gives it back. It will want to be something, but not now.
We tuck it away in the drawer where we keep the threads that are not ready. There are many. Some stay there for years, some never leave, and some return in dreams. That night I dream of a loom in the desert, not wood, but sand, shifting with each breath. I sit beside it, weaving thread of wind and shadow. Each pattern disappears the moment I finish it, and still I keep weaving. I wake with the shape of a new motif in my mind, a wheel inside a crescent moon. I draw it quickly before it fades. It doesn't match any tradition I know, but it feels true. At dawn, the street outside smells of barley and hoof oil. The monks have begun their rounds, bowls clinking softly as they accept rice and tea. A child runs past with a strip of purple cloth tied around his head like a crown, laughing. The city never sleeps, not really. It dreams in cycles, in incense, in footsteps, in silk. As I prepare the loom, I run my fingers along the beam. Silence. Then a faint thrum. It is time. I begin to weave the pattern from my dream, the wheel, the moon, the vanishing thread. As I press the shuttle through the warp, I do not worry whether it will sell, whether anyone will understand. I only listen. The monks taught me this. The sacred does not always announce itself. Sometimes it whispers. And sometimes it travels in caravans, wrapped in dust and cinnamon, waiting to be heard by hands that remember how to listen. The invitation came in the form of a silken ribbon, deep red, embroidered with tiny geometric patterns in gold. No characters, no names, just a gesture, a message understood only by those who live their lives in cloth. Tonight, Mali said after reading the signs stitched in thread, they're opening their tent to us. The Persians? She nodded. In Chang'an, the Persian quarter breathes differently. It hums with foreign vowels and smokes with spices unfamiliar even to our seasoned kitchens.
Their courtyards bloom with fragrant rosewater. Their walls glow in hues we do not yet name. And their fabrics, their fabrics speak languages of color we are still learning to hear. I've met them before, briefly, in markets, on the road near the Western Gate, in the quiet barter of materials and patterns, but never in their own space, never like this. When we arrive, it's night. Lanterns burn low along the alley, their glass panels casting mosaic light, blue, green, saffron, crimson, onto the cobblestones. A boy with eyes like polished almonds opens the embroidered curtain and gestures us inside. The scent wraps around us instantly. Cardamom, sandalwood, warm dates, and a hint of wool. The space is dim, not dark, and the glow comes not from a hearth, but from the silks themselves. Draped across the walls, hanging like rain from the ceiling, folded in baskets, color upon color, like a garden grown in shadow. We remove our shoes. The floor is layered in carpets, soft and fragrant. Musicians sit near the edge, playing something slow and winding, with instruments curved like calligraphy. There are cushions, dates, tea with floating strands of saffron, and bowls of roasted nuts. But the center of the room belongs to the cloth. A bolt of fabric lies across a low platform, unlike anything I've ever seen. Deep indigo velvet, embroidered with threads of bronze and coral, arranged in an interlocking pattern of lions and stars. Each shape is bordered by something too precise to be coincidence, and too complex to decipher without time. A woman in a long ivory robe steps forward. "This is from Yazd," she says in fluent Chinese, her accent laced with song. "Woven by my uncle and 2 of his sons. Took 6 months." We all lean closer. The thread has texture, tiny ridges, almost like scales. The lions are not fierce, but noble, mid-roar, manes flowing like river currents. The stars are not symmetrical, but each radiates with intention.
I want to touch it, but I wait. She smiles. Go on. I place 2 fingers on the cloth. It hums. Not literally, of course, but it feels alive, as though each thread still remembers the hands that wove it, the dust it absorbed on its journey east, the languages spoken above it while it rested in a camel's saddlebag. We sit, we talk, we drink. Weavers from 3 continents gather on cushions to trade stories, not through words, but through cloth. A man from Samarkand rolls out a shawl made of camel hair so soft it floats when dropped. A woman from Antioch presents a scarf dyed with crushed beetles, its red so rich it seems to pulse. Then they turn to us. Ma Li brings out our offering, a scroll of Tang silk embroidered with clouds, cranes, and peony petals. The light catches on the lotus thread outlines, and a hush falls over the room. The Persian woman touches the edges, then brings it to her cheek. This is what the wind would wear, she says. We laugh, not because it's funny, but because it's true. And then, slowly, the comparisons begin. We speak of tension, how theirs is looser, more fluid, how ours is taut and measured. We speak of symbolism, how their stars are maps, their animals myths, how our clouds carry poetry and our cranes promise rebirth. We speak of dye, of sumac and saffron, indigo and fungus, crushed pearl and fermented bark. Each of us offers a secret. Each of us holds one back. Later in the evening, the conversation turns quiet. A man with a silver-threaded turban speaks softly, barely above a whisper. In our lands, we believe fabric holds prayer, that a robe worn in love carries that warmth into the next life. I nod. We say the silk remembers the hands that touched it first. He smiles. Then perhaps the silk never forgets. Someone brings out an old textile, tattered at the edges, faded, but still pulsing with beauty. It's a funeral shroud, they say. The woman it belonged to was buried in another. This was kept to remember her. We pass it hand to hand. It smells of time. And then something unexpected. A boy no older than 15 unrolls a piece of plain linen. No decoration, no embroidery, just a single stitch in the center, a spiral made of mismatched colors. It was my sister's, he says. She stitched her name into this pattern. It's not a word, but it's her. We understand, not because we know her, but because every weaver knows the compulsion to place the self quietly, reverently, into the thread. Near midnight, the music returns. Not loud, not for dance, but for thought, for weaving of stories not into cloth, but into memory. As I sit there, wrapped in incense and moonlight and the shared breath of strangers, I feel the walls between cultures soften. We speak no common language fully, and yet, in thread, we are kin. A woman places her hand over mine and says, "We weave borders, but we live beyond them." I do not know her name, but I will remember her face as long as I remember silk. When we leave, each of us carries something, not a gift, but an imprint, a way of seeing color that didn't exist before, a sense that the threads we spin are only part of a tapestry stretching across the world. As we step into the street, the lanterns have begun to fade.
The air smells of cinnamon and cooling stone. The ribbon from the invitation still rests in my sleeve. I do not need to keep it, but I do. It happened between bolts of brocade, not with the thunder of drums or the flutter of fans, but with the brush of fingertips across folded cloth. I remember the moment clearly, though at the time I didn't know it was a beginning. We were preparing a shipment for the Eastern District, 3 bundles of peony-patterned silk, 2 dyed robes for the House of Scholars, and a bolt of imperial violet that shimmered like plum skin in dusklight.
I was checking the ties, smoothing the corners, pressing out the creases, when he entered. Tall, quiet, carrying a sealed scroll and the scent of horse sweat and almond oil. He didn't speak right away. Instead, he stood at the edge of the workshop, just beyond the wash of lantern light, holding the scroll like something fragile. The others ignored him, the way we do with most couriers. But I looked up, and he met my gaze. Eyes the color of honey in autumn sun. Not unusual, but not common either. He stepped forward and handed me the scroll. "The Master Weaver?" he asked. "No," I said, "just the one who listens to the cloth." He smiled, not mockingly, but as though that was the answer he'd hoped for. The scroll bore the seal of a provincial magistrate, a new commission for ceremonial sashes, 13 in total, for a festival honoring the river spirits. The designs were straightforward, but the delivery was early, and his journey long. "You'll stay the night?" I asked. He nodded. That should have been it, a stranger passing through. But somehow he didn't leave the workshop. He wandered between the racks of cloth, silent but curious, his hands tucked respectfully behind his back. I caught him once brushing a sleeve of cloud-patterned silk with the back of his hand, as though afraid his palm might disturb it. "You weave all of this?" he asked. "Not alone," I said, "but yes, some of it." He paused near a hanging tapestry, one of my quieter pieces, a crane in snow, a tree without leaves. The kind of work that doesn't sell quickly, but stays with you, waiting for the right heart to find it. "This one is sad," he said. "Or honest," I replied. He nodded, and we fell into a silence that felt less like an ending and more like a breath being held. Later, Ma Li called me aside. "Be careful," she said. "Of what?" "Of looking too long at someone who sees you back." But it was too late. The next day he returned, no scroll, no message, just a reasonless visit. He claimed to have forgotten something, then stayed to help fold fabric, then asked questions about dye and thread and the movement of the loom. He wasn't a weaver, but he watched like one. His name was Ren. He came from the river provinces, where the fog clings to your lungs and the boats are tied like horses to the banks. He spoke of water the way I speak of silk, with reverence and sorrow. He said the current never stopped, even when you begged it to. Days passed. He kept finding excuses to return. Deliveries, questions, a lost glove, a bowl of pears. Once he brought me a cocoon, whole and untouched, resting on a carved piece of bamboo. A perfect one, he said, for luck. I did not need it, but I kept it. The first time he touched my hand, it was not in hunger or haste. We had both reached for the same pair of scissors, and our fingers met at the handle. I did not pull away, nor did he. For a moment we held the metal together.
After that, he stopped pretending. He came at night sometimes when the city was quiet, bringing roasted chestnuts or plum wine. We sat on the back steps of the workshop, our feet bare against the cool stone, speaking not of love, but of stories, of the stars, of dreams, of things we had once lost. I showed him a robe I had made for myself, not to wear, but to remember. It was dyed in moon gray and woven with mountain silhouettes, each one stitched with thread I had dyed from memory, the scent of my grandfather's hands, the feel of mulberry bark, the taste of jasmine before bloom. He touched the edge of it softly. "Do you always put your heart into the cloth?" he asked. "Where else would I put it?" He looked at me, and his eyes said something his mouth did not. I answered in silence. Love, I've learned, does not always bloom in spring. Sometimes it arrives in the autumn of your body, in the winter of your voice, quietly.
And sometimes it's gone before it's named. Wren left on the last day of summer, summoned back to his province by a father who needed a son more than I needed a lover. He left a pouch of saffron dye on my workbench with a note that simply read, "This color reminded me of your thoughts." I never asked what that meant. I didn't need to. Now, when I dye silk in saffron, I do it slowly. I let the threads soak longer. I stir the vat with care. I let the fabric drink him in again. Some say silk remembers touch. I believe it remembers love, too. It holds it quietly, not in patterns, not in shine, but in tension, in breath, in the way it falls when you let it go. Sometimes I weave a motif only he would recognize. A river inside a circle, a boat with no sail, a moon with no sky. No one else notices, but I do, and I think perhaps that's enough. The wind from the west doesn't knock, it drifts. It arrives without ceremony, curling under eaves and through alleyways, carrying stories folded in dust. You can smell it before you feel it. Cumin, salt, horses, sweat, old parchment, and something else. Something electric, like the pause before a decision. We call it the caravan breath. It changes the air in Chang'an. You'll be walking to the market, or rinsing thread at the river, or stretching dyed cloth across cedar racks, when suddenly you pause, and you know a caravan has entered the city, not because of noise, not because of sight, but because of feeling. The wind carries things from far away, and not just spices or silk. It carries possibility. And possibility, I've learned, is the most dangerous scent of all. Today, that wind reaches our workshop. It lifts the corner of a half-finished robe. It rustles the scrolls stacked on Mali's shelf. It stirs my memory. I stop weaving and glance outside. Along the avenue, carts groan beneath the weight of wonder.
Boxes of incense from India, pearls from the Persian Gulf, lapis from the mountains near Bactria, and cloth, always cloth, from places whose names sound more like songs than cities. Men wrapped in dyed wool, women veiled in embroidered linen, children with bangles that chime as they run. One merchant walks with a parrot on his shoulder, its feathers like scattered paint. Another leads a bear on a leash, though it looks more bored than fierce. Somewhere, a flute plays a melody I don't recognize. Strange intervals, like a river that doesn't flow forward. I stand at the doorway of the workshop, just breathing it all in. This is not new. The western winds have visited before, but today feels different. Today,
They bring more than goods. They bring questions. One of the caravan guards stops at our stall, a young woman with sunburned cheeks and eyes so dark they could be onyx. She speaks passable Chinese, and even better silence. She asks if we have any sky-pattern silk. For whom, Mali asks, folding a bolt of pale blue. For someone who still dreams of clouds. No more explanation. She pays in coins from a land I cannot name, their edges scalloped, their faces blank. We accept them anyway. Sometimes currency is less important than the story it brings. Before she leaves, she notices the pattern on my sleeve, a crescent entwined with a wheel, a motif I dreamed once after sitting near the temple garden. She touches it gently. In my home, she says, that means return. I blink. I thought I invented it. She smiles. Perhaps you remembered it. The western wind doesn't only bring people. It also takes things away. Ideas, certainty, attachment. A few days later, a man arrives, a Sogdian translator I've met before. He brings a message. A court in Samarkand has requested Tang silk with phoenix motifs, but stylized, not the sweeping feathers we favor, but angular wings, sharper beaks, forms that mimic their desert birds. Can we do this? He asks. I do not answer immediately. Can we change the phoenix? Can we reshape what to us is sacred? Ma Li speaks before I do. The phoenix has many shapes, she says. Fire does not burn the same in every hearth. We accept the commission. That night I cannot sleep. I sit before the loom, sketching new wings. The Tang phoenix is fluid, poetic. This new version is angular, almost harsh. A bird born of wind and stone, not ash and myth. But I like it, because in it I see a truth, that symbols are not fixed, that silk is not static, that thread, like wind, moves where it's allowed, and sometimes where it must. I begin the new phoenix at dawn. Its wings stretch wide across a twilight sky. Its eye is not soft. It is knowing. Around its neck I stitch a ring of unfamiliar stars. I wonder if someone, years from now, will see it and ask, is this truly Tang silk? And I hope the answer will be yes, and something more. The western wind continues to visit. It leaves behind bundles of herbs we've never smelled, threads that shimmer in strange ways, and stories, always stories, of a city built on salt and glass, of a woman who sings to silkworms and dreams of thread in gold, of a desert where the sand itself changes color by moonlight. Sometimes I think of leaving, of following the wind back through the gates, past the mountains, into the unknown, not to trade, not to sell, just to see. But then I return to my loom, to the thread stretched taut like breath held between worlds, to the shuttle warm from the last pass, to the pattern still unfinished. I may never leave Chang'an, but the wind that passes through me, it will carry something I've made, something small, a ribbon, a robe, a prayer woven in gold. And someone, somewhere, far away, will touch it. They'll lift it to the light, and they'll pause, just for a moment, feeling something familiar in the fibers. Not my name, not my face, but the shape of my thoughts, the texture of my hope, the promise of the western wind. My hands have changed.
They are no longer the slim, nimble fingers of a girl who once unraveled cocoons in a courtyard while plum blossoms fell silently into dye vats. The skin now folds more deeply at the knuckles. The calluses are permanent, the mark of the loom pressed into the flesh like a seal. I feel the weather through my bones, and the silk sometimes slips from my grasp more easily than it used to. But I trust my hands more now. They have held grief. They have held joy. They have woven the lives of others into silence and gold. And now they prepare to let go. This morning I rolled up a tapestry I've been working on for almost a year. A landscape of clouds, not drawn from life, but from memory. It is a gift for no one. It has no patron, no commission, just a quiet need to finish it, to give shape to something I can't name. The sky in the tapestry is a strange one. It begins in sunrise rose and ends in a dusk so deep it almost swallows light. Between the layers, I've stitched things I've never spoken aloud. The curve of my grandfather's wrist, the smell of saffron and horses, the glint of Wren's smile beneath rain-soaked hair. There's a crane flying across it, always a crane, and beneath its wings a pattern that only someone who knows me will recognize, a looped thread, an unfinished knot. I place the rolled tapestry on the high shelf above my loom. I do not label it. I do not seal it. If someone finds it after I'm gone, let them guess. Let them wonder. The younger weavers ask me if I will continue working. Your hands are still strong, one says, placing a spool of thread in my palm. They're tired, I reply, but not weak. I don't tell her that I've begun to forget certain patterns, that sometimes I must redraw a motif again and again before my fingers remember its rhythm.
That in dreams I now see the loom from a distance rather than sitting before it, as though I am already halfway gone. I prepare the loom for one last piece, not for a festival, nor the court, nor a bride, just for closure. A robe, simple in design, but the most difficult kind. No embroidery, no gold, just a field of pale green, like moss in morning shadow, the color of beginning, not ending. The thread I use is old stock, soft, obedient, familiar. It glides through the heddles as if it too remembers the sound of my breath. Each day I weave a little, no rush. The others continue their work around me. The rhythm of looms, the bubbling of dye pots, the whisper of scissors through cloth. I am no longer the center. I am the echo. May comes to me often now, asking questions not just about weaving, but about what weaving means. "Do you think it's sacred?" she asks one evening. I look up from the shuttle and consider. "No," I say at last, "but it's honest." "Isn't that the same?" I smile. "Sometimes." On the 8th day, I add a single crane, just a silhouette, stitched in barely visible thread at the hem of the robe. No one will see it unless they look closely, but I will know it's there, the same way my grandfather knew which thread held the memory of his mother's voice. This is how we say goodbye, not in words, not in bows, not in tears, but in thread, in the choice of color, in the pause before a knot is tied, in the silence after a loom is finally still. One evening I sit with Ma Li. We sip barley tea, warm and plain. She looks at my hands and says nothing. Then she holds hers out beside mine. both pairs worn and wrinkled, scarred by decades of needles and tension, curled slightly inward from habit. The same shape, two old birds resting on a branch. "We are not machines," she says. "No," I reply, "we are memory." That night, I dream I am standing in a field of undyed silk, stretching forever. The sky above is blank, waiting. My hands move of their own accord, and where I touch the fabric, patterns appear. Smoke, petals, rivers, eyes. All the motifs I've ever known. And then I press both palms to the cloth, and the whole thing turns gold. When I wake, my loom is quiet. The robe is finished. I fold it gently and place it in the cedar chest at the foot of my bed. I do not know if I'll wear it, or if someone else will find it years from now and wonder about the old weaver who left no name inside. The hands that say goodbye do not wave. They fold cloth. They tie thread. They touch the loom one last time and let the silence settle in. The city fades gently in the early hours, not with sound, but with soft surrender. Chang'an exhales a breath of jasmine and charcoal, and everything blurs. Rooftops soften, banners blur, and even the sharp corners of memory lose their edge. I wake not to the sound of footsteps or birdsong, but to stillness, the kind of stillness that speaks in mist. It slips beneath the doorframe and brushes against my skin, cool and weightless, like the hem of a dream I forgot to finish. Outside, the courtyard is washed in gray. The air smells of damp wood and falling plum blossoms. It is the kind of morning that asks nothing of you, only that you witness it. I do not dress fully. A robe of raw silk clings loosely to my shoulders, and my feet are bare against the stone. The earth beneath me is soft with night rain, and I move slowly, without aim, without thought. The city feels distant. Even my own name feels far away. The workshop is still, though the looms wait like sleeping beasts, their frames bowed, their shuttles paused mid-air. I do not light the lamps. I do not speak. There is nothing more to say. The robe I finished, the last, remains folded in its chest, untouched since the day I placed it there. I run my hand along its cover and feel the breath of the threads beneath it, dormant now, like seeds in winter. Everything is quiet. Everything is soft. Even the past. The tapestries on the wall have lost their crispness. The gold no longer glints. The phoenixes sleep in folds. The cranes no longer rise, they drift, weightless, into cloud. Patterns I once knew by heart now feel like mist, present but unreachable. This is how it should be. I take the last cocoon, the one wren gave me long ago, and place it on the sill. It is cracked now, empty, but still it rests as if waiting. The mist thickens. It slips into my lungs, my thoughts. I feel myself loosening, thread by thread. No pain, just unraveling. And in that soft dissolution, the world becomes wider, not smaller. I see the silk river of my childhood stretching far behind me, dyed with stories I no longer need to hold. I see the threads I've woven, each one still moving, stretched across lands and tongues, across looms I will never touch. I see faces, Ma Li humming over steam, my grandfather asleep at his loom,
Wren smiling beneath clouds he did not name. I see the unfinished patterns, and they do not trouble me. They shimmer, they glow, they float away. A single breath, a single thread, and then mist. Mist in the rafters, mist in my chest, mist between each word I never said. And from that mist, a voice, not loud, not sharp, but known. Good night, traveler. The loom vanishes, the silk loosens, and I drift with it, weightless, warm, held by every fabric I ever loved. The mist does not clear, it deepens. Soft as the hush between rain and roof, it wraps around thought, around breath, around the pulse beneath your skin. The city is gone now, its markets, its looms, its banners in the wind. Chang'an has folded itself into shadow and silk, becoming a place only the quiet remember. You are no longer standing. You are no longer weaving. You are floating. The river of thread stretches beneath you, shimmering pale, beneath a moon that has no source. Cranes glide overhead, not flapping, but drifting, their wings wide and still. They do not call. Their silence sings louder than any voice. The robe you wore unthreads slowly, not torn, not taken, just undone, as if time has remembered that even cloth must sleep. The gold fades first, then the blue, then the faint green of memory. All color becomes fog, all detail becomes breath. A petal falls, a feather follows, then nothing. You hear footsteps that do not echo. You smell the memory of jasmine. You feel warmth where there is no fire. In the distance, looms still creak, not in labor, but in lullaby, a gentle thrum like heartbeat against wood. They are weaving still, those who came before, weaving mist, weaving memory, weaving sleep. A crane circles once just above your chest, then it too dissolves. There are no more patterns, no more stories, only the softness between, only the hush, only the thread that connects you to silk, to stars, to everything. Let go now, let the loom fall still, let the silk cradle you, let the mist carry you, let the sleep begin. Good night, time traveler. May your dreams carry echoes of the voices we have borrowed, and may morning find you rested, wrapped in the soft footprints we've left on the endless sands of history.